English is under grave threat, and the woke warriors or the free... it's just outrageous. You get arrested for saying you're English in this day and age. But also, a BBC presenter has just apologised for liking some tweets after coming under attack from precisely the sort of people who say the things that I just said with my tongue in my cheek, which is bizarre, especially when you consider that it all comes down to a flag and a comment from a television presenter, which was quite funny, to a politician who had an enormous flag in his office, and the presenter said, "I'm afraid your flag is a little bit small. It's not exactly Dave Allen, but it's moderately funny because it was huge." And there has sometimes seemed to be a competition among politicians from the government party to see who can have the most flags in the background, or indeed the biggest ones. So Robert Jenrick, who frankly should be under media scrutiny for things that have nothing whatsoever to do with flags, but that's on the media, not on you. He had an enormous flag behind him while giving an interview to the BBC. The presenter, Charlie State, commented tongue-in-cheek on his flag being a little bit small, which prompted some giggling from all concerned, including Charlie State's co-presenter, a journalist called Naga Munchetty. And then everything just seemed to explode, and I don't fully understand why, I have to be honest with you. Culminating in Ms Munchetty apologising on Twitter for liking tweets about the use of the Union Jack flag in the background of a government interview. So some of the tweets that she liked, I think, were pretty rough. I mean, I see a lot of the extremities of Twitter. It's easy not to like things, and apologising for liking tweets is not the same as apologising for laughing at something you found funny. Although, you know, the line between those two things seems increasingly hard to distinguish. And then you see people contributing to the debate in a way that, even after the last few years, I find... I mean, would you laugh at me if I said I find it a bit chilling? Do you think? I just kind of... Well, let's have a look. I mean, these are elected MPs responding to... I thought it was a relatively harmless show. And watching Robert Jenrick's response... I think he did as well, but of course, if the opportunity to make political capital presents itself, then it wouldn't be the first time in history that a politician has recognised an opportunity and adjusted his attitude accordingly. So somebody called James Sunderland writes, who is, I think, a proper MP, yet more smirking nonsense from the increasingly out-of-touch BBC. This odious behaviour needs to be cut out of our national broadcaster before it loses even more viewers. And again, you know, I don't know Mr. Sunderland, but the political positions that he seems to be supportive of tend to be the ones that claim that our freedom of speech is under threat and you're not allowed to say what you want in this country anymore without being arrested. I don't understand. How can you be worried about freedom of speech and also furious about a sort of mediocre joke about massive flags? Again, another MP, I just looked her up. She wrote a piece in September about how Brexit was going to be brilliant for the fishing industry. So she's definitely someone worth paying attention to. Leah Nietzsche writes... Of course, if people are not proud to be British or of our flag or queen, they don't have to live in the UK. Perhaps they should move to another country they prefer. So, if I come into your house and you've got a flag the size of a football pitch up in your sitting room, and I say to you, blimey, I don't think much of your flag. It's not very big, is it? Does that mean I hate the Queen? Is that really the country that we're becoming? Or am I missing, once again, is it possible that I'm missing something huge here? If I come into your office and you've got a flag that is of above average dimensions, right? I don't know what the average size is for a flag. I'm a little bit puzzled by why you have flags indoor anyway. Whether they're European Union flags or flags of St. George or green flags. Why have you got one indoor? They're supposed to flap in the wind, in the breeze. You can't fly a flag if there isn't any wind. But anyway, that's possibly a conversation for another day. If I come into your office and you've got a flag of rather large dimensions, big enough, let's say, for me to wonder where you got it from. You know, where do you have to go to get really big flags? And I make a little joke about how big your flag is by commenting on how small it is. Does that mean I hate my country? Does that mean I really hate the United Kingdom or whatever bit of it I live in? Because that appears to be the contention from this, again, a genuine Conservative member of Parliament. If people are not proud to be British or of our flag or queen, and this is in direct response to a clip of Charlie State making that joke, which, again, looking at the footage, Robert Jenrick seemed to appreciate, seemed to find quite funny. Used to be a very British thing, didn't it, to tease people or to poke a bit of fun at people in power. That enormous flag you've got there, so it's not a very big flag, is it? I haven't got the hang of this. It's my big mission for 2020. One is, I do honestly want you to ring me if you're really, really cross about this BBC presenter making a joke about the size of Robert Jenrick's flag. A joke that Jenrick himself seemed to appreciate. How does it happen? What am I missing? What is it that I lack that somehow leads me more towards a sort of bemused befuddlement than it does towards a chomping rage? How dare they? I don't know if you know this. I don't know if I've told you this, but the story about Russell Brand and Andrew Sachs was broken and indeed pursued by an old pal of mine. And this was when they really behaved appallingly. They left really nasty messages upon the answer phone, God, all right, Grandad, on the voicemail of Andrew Sachs, the late Andrew Sachs, the actor who played Manuel in Fawlty Towers. And Russell Brand had a brief relationship with his granddaughter, with Andrew Sachs's granddaughter, and he referenced that on the voicemail message that him and Jonathan Ross left for him, which is just really bad behaviour. It's really grim conduct. But nobody really noticed, because it went out, I think, on Radio 2 in a relatively... It can't have been a low-profile slot because they're big stars. But it had picked up, I don't think, hardly any complaints. But my pal heard it, you see. He was at home of an evening with the radio on in the background, and he heard it, and he just thought, out of interest, I'll have a look at how many complaints they were. He wrote a little story about it, and the scandal kicked off when he wrote the story. That's the point I'm making. It was not a reflection of people who heard the radio show. It was a reflection of the rage of people who'd been told about the radio show. Now, that might not matter. It may be that they're more or less the same thing. But this feels a little bit the same, doesn't it? I can't see how anyone could have watched that clip in the context of the programme and felt that there'd been an act of treason or some appalling affront to Her Majesty the Queen. There was a picture of the Queen on the wall as well in the office. And, you know, who here hasn't got a picture of the Queen on the wall at home? I think the reaction has been very deliberately stoked. And of course, if I was in charge of this country at the moment, what would I rather you talked about? Flags and BBC presenters, or 125,000 people dead and an unexpected hiccup in the hitherto brilliant vaccine rollout? So flags. I got to get this question right, because I want come one, come all. Everybody's welcome on this conversation. If you're cross with me for not recognising the importance of this issue, not recognising the gravity of the offence committed by these two journalists, then please feel free to enlighten me. Feel free to set me straight. 0345 606 0973. But here's a question everyone can answer. This might be quite a good way into it. Why is this a story? 0345 606 0973. Don't waste tuppence telling me, well, you're talking about it. I'm talking about the news coverage of it, and I'm talking about elected parliamentarians suggesting that if you... Well, the bit I don't understand, the thing that I've done that means I should go and live somewhere else. I'm being told by a politician responsible for abolishing my freedom of movement. So why is this a story? You can be as cynical or as detail-driven as you want to be. Why on earth is this a story? There's a politician on the telly who's got a massive flag in the background. I'm pretty sure we didn't used to have flags in the background as a matter of course in this country. It's always struck me as a rather American way to behave. But it's a massive flag. It's a humongous flag. So the presenter makes a little joke about the size of the flag by saying, well, that's not a very big flag, is it? It's like the most obvious sarcasm. And suddenly it's in every newspaper, and his colleague who laughed has had to apologise for liking tweets. Just explain it to me as if I'm stupid. There you go, that should be fairly easy game to play. Just explain it to me as if I'm stupid. But again, with these manufactured culture war issues, You have to explain it with words, I'm afraid. You can't just sort of growl at me. You have to explain it with words. Why have people got upset about this? People who tomorrow will be back to claiming that their freedom of speech is under attack. Why have they got upset with a joke about a flag? 0345 6060 973. I was thinking of asking Dom Jolly to come on the programme to comment upon how big a flag has to be before it actually becomes comical. Because Dom, of course, came to fame on Trigger Happy TV with that absolutely enormous phone that he used to carry around the place. And it was funny. Presumably, a calculation was done. You have an expanding phone. Not funny, not funny, not funny. Phone's getting bigger. Not funny, not funny, not funny. Funny. I don't know that would work with a flag, because you could have a flag the size of the football pitch at Wembley, and it would still be a rather impressive thing. It would still be, for many people, a thing of beauty. But flags, national flags, are supposed to be rallying points for entire populations. If anyone's going to get offended by misuse of flags, surely it would be people who are trying to turn them into deliberate and divisive distractions from political decisions responsible for the deaths of tens of thousands of British people. You're going to get cross about the flag. Surely you're going to get cross with politicians trying to use it to camouflage their own culpability for the catastrophe of the last 12 months. But no, apparently, you're going to get cross with someone for making a mediocre joke about the weird size of a flag in a politician's office, where presumably the only wind would be the wind created by the politician. So just talk me through. Imagine I've just woken up this morning and I've opened up my newspapers and there's a huge furore about a journalist making a mediocre joke about the size of a politician's flag. And I can't believe it matters. And I don't think it does, but I could, of course, be wrong. Explain to me either why it matters, in your view, and something rather awful has happened, 0345 606 0973, why it is being presented or inflated in a way designed to make us think that it does matter, or to make some people think that it does matter, 0345 606 0973, or why are conservative politicians so thin-skinned? Why are they suggesting that if you laugh at a mediocre joke about an enormous flag, you should actually go and live in a different country? That's the bit I don't get. And it's possible that this politician isn't the sharpest knife in the drawer. As I mentioned, they wrote an article last year about how Brexit was going to be brilliant for the fishing industry. So, that's very much evidence for the prosecution. But possibly I'm missing something. I just, a flag is a symbol. I care more about people than symbols. I care more about people than statues. Now we're getting somewhere. Anyway, hit the numbers now. You will get through. Sonia's in Great Notley. Sonia, make sense of it for me.
Good morning.
Hello.
Hello there. I felt the need to call in. I was listening. I find it absolutely crazy that everyone's getting on their high horse about such a comment.
Well, are we running the risk of getting on our high horse about all the other people getting on their high horse about something we don't think anyone should be getting on their high horse about? I'm trying to do it in a kind of in a tone of bemused amusement, Sonia. I find it largely funny, but I'm worried that I might get beheaded for finding it funny if this lot get any more power.
I know. That's exactly how I feel. Something like that does amuse me. It made me smile, the fact that, yes, a huge flag, and he merely commented on a small flag.
Yes.
I thought that was amusing. I really can't see how anybody would find that offensive. Obviously they do, but I think there are much more things to be worried about than the size of somebody's flag or a comment on it.
And the people who are apparently outraged by it are precisely the sort of people who are usually wanging on about how freedom of speech is under attack, and you can't say anything in this country without being arrested.
It's terrible. And it honestly is that you actually feel like we're in a society that you have to think about every single thing that you say because it's going to upset somebody, it's going to offend somebody. When in actual fact, the person being offended or upset, you're never going to know their boundaries. Never, ever.
Very true.
And it's their prerogative. That's fine. But
everyone tries to be nice.
Live like that.
Everyone tries to be nice. And then if they accidentally upset someone, they can apologise and withdraw. Well, you're no use to me, Sonia. You're as baffled by this as I am. But it was lovely to make your acquaintance. It was lovely to meet you. You take care. Have a lovely weekend. 23 after 12. Pip has just sent me a picture of Ted Heath addressing the nation from behind the desk at Downing Street. Not a flag in sight. It is a new thing, I think. And there may be examples in history of where flags have been promoted or used excessively. Some might say excessively. And there hasn't been anything dodgy or sinister going on at all. It's all been a perfectly normal... I presume, look, let's take America as an example. Do things get more flaggy when there's a Republican in the White House than they do when there's a Democrat in the White House? I don't think so. So, you know, and I don't all school children in America sing to the flag or salute the flag every morning before they start lessons? So it doesn't have to be sinister, but I don't understand why this lot have done it now and why everyone's getting so upset about a mediocre joke about a rather large flag. Steve's in Bodmin in Cornwall. Is that flag country?
Yeah, hi, James.
Hello, Steve.
Yeah, we've got one or two down here.
Carry on.
I just wanted to point out, I did actually phone a couple of months ago when I first noticed this. I noticed that Nadeem Zahawi...
Did we let you on?
Pardon?
Did we let you on?
No, I didn't. It was near the end of the show, like it is now, actually.
Okay.
I didn't get on, but I just wanted to point out that the Tories just seem to be doing what the National Front did years ago, and the BNP with the Union flag, and then the BNP with the flag of St George, in that they're hijacking the flag so that if you don't support us, you don't support your country, because we are the country.
That's a leap. I mean, I understand why you mentioned the National Front and the BNP. You're not suggesting that they're pursuing similar policies, but on this specific... Well, you might be.
No, I'm just saying it's the same tactic.
Yes, this specific
by
tactic.
hiding behind the flag and identifying yourself as that, a vote against me is a vote against your country.
So if I laugh...
Ably backed up by the press.
Yeah, well, ably backed up, passionately backed up. So if I laugh at a joke directed at a politician, at a member of the government, then somehow the flag is like this magic potion that then allows them to accuse me of hating my country and not liking the Queen.
Yeah, but I think that is the deliberate point. That's why they put people up to just really to raise publicity if somebody makes a joke about it.
But he seemed to find it funny.
A vote against the Tories is a vote against your country.
And is that what it is? So if you can... okay. No, this is quite clever. So if you can somehow conflate country with party using the flag...
I mean, or with individuals. Just look at Trump, for example. Everything is about the flag with him. We love our flag. The flag is our country.
But Trump hates or doesn't have any compassion or concern for any human being except himself, including his own family members. But of course, the flag
and
somehow.
Look at our own government in that light as well.
Well, you might say that. I wouldn't go. I wouldn't go quite that far. But you turn the flag into a symbol not of national unity but of national division because it represents one particular party. And then any criticism of that party conflates into criticism of an entire country, which is how a Conservative MP can say, if you laugh at a mediocre joke about a flag, which for my money has got very little business being indoors anyway, then you must hate the Queen and you should leave this country immediately. How can you listen to this? Not Steve down in Bodmin, but everybody listening. How can you listen to what I'm saying and not feel at least a slight frisson of fear? Crikey, this feels a little bit like stuff that's happened in the past. I'm not allowed to tease or criticise a politician over a flag because if I do, I must hate my country and malign Her Majesty. No? Okay. Albie's in Chiswick, God's own country. Albie, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello.
I just wanted to have a quick stab at why people might be so upset about it. I'm not particularly upset about it, and I think the reaction has been really over the top. And I'm a Conservative myself, member and voter, and I think it's all blown out of proportion. But I think that there is kind of a general feeling, I think, on the centre-right, people who, identify as Conservatives, who sort of think that people on the left aren't proud of British symbols like the flag, the national anthem, Rule Britannia, etc. And I'll just refer back to a conversation I had with my sister a few days ago, and we were just chatting, and she said, because we were bored in lockdown, if you had to get a tattoo, what tattoo would you get?
Yeah.
And I said, I don't know, maybe I might get the Union Jack.
Yeah.
And I'm a Tory, she's very much Labour, she's a student at university, and she said, oh my God, how could you possibly get a Union Jack flag? Don't you know what that represents? And I said, well, what does it represent? And she said, colonialism, etc., etc. And I understand those arguments. I studied history.
Well, I do as well, but that's not what this lad on the BBC was doing. He was just making a joke about the size of it. And also, because we're going to run out of time, and I just have a crack at this for me. Why do I have to be proud of a flag? Why can't I just be proud of my people?
I think you can be proud of both, but I just think...
But why do I have to be proud of a flag?
You don't need to be proud of a flag, but a flag represents a people and represents a country.
Well, not in this context it doesn't, because it's supposed to represent the people who are being pilloried as well, isn't it? Isn't that Naga Munchetty's flag as much as it's yours?
It is. And look, I'm talking as a mixed-race man. It's my flag as much as it's anyone's flag in the country, white, black, Asian, whatever. But I just think it builds into this whole culture, which I hate, that if you're on the centre right of politics, you're proud of flags, and if you're on the centre left of politics, you're not proud of flags.
Yeah,
and it builds
you're probably right. You're probably right. Do you worry as a Conservative member? Do you see what I see? Do you see an attempt to conflate criticism of the Conservative Party with hatred of our country? Do you see that tactic being deployed by people on your side of the fence or not?
I mean, not me personally.
No, I know not you personally, but do you think it is going on?
I think there are some people who vote Conservative that definitely think in that way. I don't think. And
loads of people don't. No, I'm thinking more of the leaders than the followers, the politicians than the voters. You know, it's Faragist, isn't it? If you make a joke about a flag, you must hate Britain and the Queen. I mean, I can't imagine anyone is going to ring me to say no. If you make a joke about a flag, then yeah, it's obvious that you really do hate Britain and the Queen, but. These things don't go away. They tend not to deflate and decrease. They tend to get worse and increase. And what happens next then becomes the question. 0345. Well, actually, phones are dead busy, and I've got some authors on next who've written an astonishing book that you need to buy. And if you haven't determined to buy it by the end of my conversation with them, then frankly, you're beyond help. And time for some proper journalism on the programme, which means I'll need to get some guests on the programme, because you certainly wouldn't trust me to do that on myself. A book was published yesterday. Parts of it have already been serialised in the Sunday Times, and it is, an astonishing account of, well, to coin a phrase, how Britain became Plague Island. It's called Failures of State, the inside story of Britain's battle with coronavirus, and it's written by the editor and deputy editor of the Sunday Times Insight investigations team. Insight, particularly over the years, being one of the jewels in the crown of British journalism, and very much going through a purple patch at the moment. And Jonathan Calvert and George Arbuthnot join me now. Congratulations, chaps, on publication. It's genuinely hard to know where to start on this, and because of that, I'd ask you what you were most shocked by, or what you were most shook by during your research and during the writing of the book.
I think for us, when we started writing the book back in May, we could see that Boris Johnson had locked down late once. We didn't expect he'd do it 3 times, and he seemed to get worse each time. So, you know, when the first lockdown happened, there were 7,000 people in hospital. The second lockdown, there were 14,000, and then the final one at the beginning of January this year, there were 30,000 people in hospital. And I think it's kind of the failure to learn from the previous mistakes that was so shocking.
And because the statistical roundup drives that shock home with a vengeance. Over the course of 2020, you were twice as likely to die from the disease as a German, 20 times the number of cases per head of population, 40 times the number of deaths than China, where the pandemic began. George, you've spoken to an astonishing array of insiders, most of them anonymous. If people put their names to the testimony that they've given you, would it be hyperbole to suggest that it would bring down the government?
I mean, they were just terrified to lose their jobs if they spoke out. The sage scientists thought they might be kicked off the committee. The doctors and nurses had been under absolutely strict instruction not to speak to any journalists unless they had the express permission of the NHS hierarchy. So much of the most important detail of what happened during the pandemic was they tried to keep under lock and key, but luckily they felt strongly enough that so many people had died completely unnecessarily, and the economy was being ripped apart by because you'd allowed so many infections to spread across the country before lockdown, that it then would have been locked down for so long to bring it back under control. And they just felt it was so unnecessary, so they felt compelled to speak to us, albeit off the record.
And yet what struck me throughout, and obviously I haven't read the whole thing yet, but the reality is completely at odds with the reporting, not by you and Jonathan, but by much of the British media. That if they were to be gleaning their understanding of what happened in 2020, it would, from British newspapers, it would bear precious little resemblance to what you've established happened by speaking to the people that were at the heart of the process.
I think what happens with the media is that there are a lot of, because it was such a big story moving every day that people weren't kind of sitting back from it and trying to understand what was going on. And we were quite lucky because in our jobs at the Sunday Times we are given time to do that, and we went back through those periods in minute detail, talking to people who were involved, etc. And that gave us a perspective that perhaps sometimes the other papers didn't have,
and an appetite as well for knowledge. I think that's what drives through. It's the why of it, not the what of it. We all have a rough idea what happened, but even something as simple as the idea that there's a tension between economy and health, whereas in fact the worse you handle the health side of it, the worse the impacts will be on the economy. I sense that both of you kind of couldn't quite believe it happened once. You were struggling to grasp that it could happen twice, but once you came around to writing essentially the same catalogue of errors for the third time, you almost run out of words to describe what's going on. At no point do they appear to have learnt from what they did wrong 2, 3, 4 months ago.
Certainly, when we spoke to the sage scientists, they were very clear that the mistake of that first wave was so obvious from the economic and mortality data from across the world. All the countries that had acted swiftly had far fewer deaths and a far better economic outcome.
Yeah.
And it just seemed inconceivable to them that we would do the same thing again. And so obviously when it came to September and they were calling for the circuit breaker lockdown, and Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak decided against it, having drafted in some kind of herd immunity advocates as kind of alternative scientific voices, and who they then sided with, overruling the government's own kind of leading experts from across the country. They were just aghast.
It's an astonishing episode. It's almost as if they cast around to find, quotes, experts, end quotes, who tell them exactly what they wanted to hear, as opposed to the information they were receiving from the people appointed to provide them with the information that they needed. Is there any sense, Jonathan, of impotence for you journalistically, given that we seem to be inhabiting a climate at the moment where, I mean, it will be denied or ignored, even though you've done a forensic job, more like a sort of PhD thesis in places than a newspaper article in accounting for exactly what happened. I feel frustrated professionally because I guess I'm comparing you to the little boy in the crowd with the naked emperor marching in front of him while everybody else is still insisting upon the quality of his clobber.
I think we definitely need an inquiry to get into.
But this is the nearest we'll get, isn't it, in the foreseeable future, isn't it? Is your book?
Well, it could well be, and I think when we wrote our book, we thought about it as almost like a kind of basis for an inquiry, because we felt that there were, that it was scandalous if you think about, kind of. The reckless decisions that were taken that really kind of, not only do they cost a lot of lives, but they also did huge damage to our economy. And I think, and there is no doubt. The root of your question is, the government has done well on the vaccination. There's no doubt about that, and that has been a great thing. But in the end, the fact that we will just be a couple of months ahead of the rest of Europe, say, on the vaccination program, I don't think counts. And I think what you have to do is go back and remember what happened in that year, because it's so important. Because there was a reason why the pandemic was the number one threat, is because it is likely that these things will happen, and they will happen in the future. And I think we need to learn those lessons in order to instruct what we do if this ever happens again.
That's the crucial point, of course, behind both the journalism and the need for an inquiry. In conclusion, and I'm looking forward to getting properly stuck in, obviously, but do you arrive at sort of easily digestible conclusions about why it has gone so appallingly badly. And I reiterate again, it's the repetition, isn't it? Not the deviation or the hesitation. It's the repetition that is so egregious and so hard to grasp. Is it down to personality? Is it down to policy? Or is that too simplistic a question?
I think certainly down to personality. It's very hard to imagine another prime minister who would have, at the beginning, just dismissed such a threat. Where in China they were having to erect hospitals within days to try and cope with the avalanche of patients, and days later, Boris Johnson dismissed action to prevent it coming to the UK as an irrational panic.
Yeah.
And he missed the first 5 Cobra meetings on the virus, even though he was actually in Westminster for 4 of them. And we actually find it very difficult to find any precedent for Prime Minister missing Cobra meetings while he's actually in Westminster. And just all the way through, it's really hard to imagine that somebody would have been quite so negligent. And certainly we've spoken to the human rights lawyers who are now representing the bereaved families, and they believe that Johnson may well be guilty of the criminal offence of gross negligence manslaughter. Now, the family's focus obviously is on an inquiry, because they're not keen to point fingers and apportion blame. All they care about is saving lives in the future and making sure that more people don't die completely unnecessarily again.
It's hard to think of starker terms than that. Jonathan Calvert, George Arbuthnot, Failures of State is out now. It was published yesterday. Before you go, chaps, I have to point out, as far as I can tell, neither of you have got a Union flag in the background. I'm going to read you this, and I am going to ask you to reflect upon it respectfully, all right? Because I will, and I'm afraid it's shaken me slightly. It's from Lisa. She says, James, I don't know if it's because I'm Jewish, but I find the jingoism and the, quotes, love, end quotes, of a flag repellent. It actually turns my stomach, and it appears to be idealised by people who are the very opposite of patriotic. It could slip into something pretty sinister very quickly. And I get that fear. I get that concern. The idea that it can be a national scandal, a carefully cultivated and whipped up national scandal because a television presenter teased a politician for having an enormous flag. And now you have, and this is what worries me much more, elected representatives, actual politicians, parliamentarians, essentially suggesting that if you tease a politician for having an enormous flag, it means you hate this country, you hate the Queen, and you should go and live somewhere else. I don't think that's patriotism. I certainly don't think that's British values. I know they can be unhelpful words. The idea that any value is uniquely or exclusively British is clearly absurd. But things that we value as a nation or a culture, that's not an absurd point. And I've always thought we were rather good at laughing at ourselves. Maybe I'm completely wrong. I often am. But I just can't quite see this country as having been a place where we'd have a fit of the vapours over a journalist joking about a flag until relatively recently. It speaks to me of an absence of confidence, an absence of national or personal confidence. You know? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I'm not sure that's true. But calling for the heads of people who've sniggered at a mediocre joke about a flag on the television, and then tomorrow you'll be back to claiming that your freedom of speech is under attack and cancel culture is coming after people like you. That's just nuts, right? Or is there some epic element to this whole episode that I'm just absolutely missing? Maraj is in Hemel Hempstead. Maraj, what would you like to say?
Hello. I agree with you. I think the joke about the flag was quite funny.
It was all right.
Yeah, I think...
No, I just did a joke about flags a minute ago, which probably wasn't actually as good. But anyway, so, no, you're right. It was slightly better than mediocre. Carry on.
Yeah, so I see this whole rallying around the flag thing, and I just think, well, this is the kind of nationalism we used to laugh at Americans for.
Yes.
Now we're doing it.
Yes.
And we've seen how that keeps on going for them. I'm scared about how that might go for us.
Do they mean it? Do you think that this... Let me get the name right. Leah Nietzsche is a Conservative MP. Do you think she really thinks that people who laugh at a joke about a giant flag should go and live somewhere else?
No, they're just weaponising
I don't know,
the
mate.
insecurities that people already have.
I don't know, because it's a question of what we used to describe as the kind of the Green Ink Brigade 100 years ago when I was on newspapers, or when I started as a radio phone-in, some of the madder stuff that would come in on text and on calls.
Yeah.
You can read all about it in my first book. I see echoes.
I really hope they don't mean it.
Well, I think that we've now got them in Parliament.
That is a scary thought.
Well, I think it is, but of course there'll be plenty of people who think, quite right too, we don't want you here if you laugh at jokes about flags.
Yeah, and I heard someone talking about Rule Britannia. Do they know what that song is about?
Well, that's a different conversation. We haven't done that. This is a student...
Yeah, of course.
I couldn't make sense of it, actually, because I presumed that the student union meeting was online anyway, so why would anybody be singing Rule Britannia on? All very odd, but no, Woke Watch. We should launch Woke Watch next week. Have a look for all these stories that are carefully designed to enrage you without really explaining what it is you're supposed to be enraged about. Marriage, thank you. What is it that's happening? What is happening? There you go. There's a question for the ages. Sarah in Brighton can tell us. Sarah, what's going on?
Oh, hi, James.
Hello.
I was, I very much agree with this idea that the Conservatives are making conservatism and their party synonymous.
It's sectarianism, isn't it? It's looking like sectarianism now.
It is, and we've seen it used regularly in the House of Commons at PMQs when Keir Starmer has sought to bring the government under scrutiny. He's been accused of being anti-patriotic and not caring about his country. So,
Has he?
I see it as a way of...
He was Director of Public Prosecutions. He was Director of Public Prosecutions.
Absolutely, but it's being used, I think, as a way of deflecting scrutiny and accountability, and that's seriously worrying. I also think that they have permeated the flag and patriotism with their own brand, and that to me is the Brexit brand. It's chauvinistic. It's
exceptionalism, isn't it? Why are we doing this?
Bullying.
Because we are better by dint of the geography or the accident of our birth. This human is better than that human.
Yeah, it excludes people. It's devoid of kindness. So, and they were the sort of people who were criticising Marcus Rashford, who, frankly, has got more patriotism in his little finger. So,
as in love of people. I wish we could separate country or flag or symbol or statue from people, citizen, voter,
exactly,
neighbour. It seems to me, it's almost a religious fervour I felt then, Sarah. That hasn't happened for a while. But why show me what you're made of by showing me how you treat people, not how you treat a flag.
How you care. And this is so, and this excluding aspect, that's what we saw in the Tory MP's tweet. If you don't like it, go home. And it's particularly interesting that I think Naga Machete has come in for quite a lot of that on Twitter, because I've been following what's been going on Twitter as well.
Have you?
She happens to have been born here, but of course she's a woman of colour. So...
there's a different flavour. I felt this talking to Ash Sarkar earlier in the week, and I often, when people say to me, what's it like being trolled like that, I say, to be honest with you, I'm white, straight and male. So compared to people like Naga or Ash or Owen Jones or David Lammy or Diane Abbott, it's really no comparison. Or Sadiq Khan, of course. My inbox this morning, elements of it were positively sewer-like, but that's the reality that they live with every single day. And I do think, and if you're unhappy with that comparison, that this kind of really inflating of the flag's importance, it's a bit like the Churchill statue being something that you're going to fight for. But Dominic Raab's recorded admission that he's going to ride roughshod over the European Convention of Human Rights, you're perfectly cool with that. So Churchill's most important peacetime achievement on the international stage, sowing the seeds that grew to become the European Convention on Human Rights. We've got a Foreign Secretary boasting about, or not boasting, simply stating that we can't be worrying about stuff like that, while claiming, other members of his party claiming that attacking his statue should get you 10 years in jail. 10 years in jail for attacking a statue. Promotion to Foreign Secretary for attacking the European Convention on Human Rights. Go on, riddle me that. Brian's in Milton Keynes. Brian, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. I think it's To me, I think it's a clever ploy. Now, I'm a Labour supporter, but to me, it emphasises differentiation, if you like. We've got the propaganda that did surround Jeremy Corbyn, didn't used to stand for the national anthem. You've got the other, if you like, almost ultra-nationalist side with the flag in the corner everywhere you look, really. And
yes.
It's almost like a get-out-of-jail card to me. It's who are you going to vote for? Now, I'm a Labour supporter, but it's the media that's portraying it. They can get away.
But no
with
one will
it.
explain it. This is why I begin to wonder whether I need to start doing those TV panel shows again, Brian. Because no one ever explains it. Why are you cross about this? What is it that you're actually cross about? It's almost as if you get rewarded for the levels of anger that you manage to achieve. If you don't like it, go and live somewhere else. You abolished freedom of movement. I mean, how can that? It would be funny if it was happening somewhere else.
And exactly, and I'll come back to the old cliche of the Daily Mail reader. You pick that up. It's all. And sorry, Jones. When you come back to, as I say, Priti Patel, Johnson, he's 2.6 million. They can do what they like.
2.6 million on a media room.
On the media, lending out the contracts. It's so. What
it is just bizarre. Well, then you've got to get this book, just so that at least you know where the bodies are buried, which would be a wholly inappropriate analogy in the current context.